Hello and welcome to a special interview with Sky Sports Patrick Davison. Now,
Hello.
Hello, Patrick. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. I was at Tottenham West Ham on Sunday, so that went reasonably smoothly. I think David Moyes is always a bit of a tricky one after they've lost, but no complaints. Didn't fall out with anyone, so I consider that a success.
Well, we had a complaint because it means we're now fifth, but yeah, moving away from that one. Now, obviously, what people might not know the face because it's the voice that most hears because you're normally behind the camera. We're going to go straight into this. Well, actually, do you know what? We'll
Joelinton.
No. I'm going to leave you suffering for a little bit longer. Okay. And what I'm going to do first is just a light, ease it in, not too, but just more on your job role because you're a touchline reporter. So what exactly does that entail?
So on a match day, I tend to get to a game 3 or 4 hours before, a couple of hours before. You're doing a couple of bits for sports news. So you might be interviewing Gary Neville or Cara or something like that, doing a little bit to promote the game. Get yourself in the tunnel, try and speak to people at the different clubs, try and find out who's starting and who's not. For example, I don't want to keep going back to Tottenham, but yesterday got a bit of an early shout that maybe Heung-min Son wouldn't be starting. So try and give yourself as much of a chance as you can with stuff like that. Then about an hour and a half, teams get in, you interview a couple of the players when they arrive. Then you've got your team news interviews with the managers. Occasionally little bits during the game, like if there's an injury or something you spot, I shouldn't bring this up because we're already going to talk about one of my big mistakes, which is the Joelinton interview. But the other thing, you're looking out for different bits during the game. And another bit, the only other thing really that I get recognised for is misidentifying the Huddersfield manager. Oh, yeah. If anyone remembers Sky reporter going up into the crowd, yeah, that was me as well. So amazing that I'm still doing it, really. So yeah, you're looking out for little bits like that. And on that day, I'm going to pass the blame on to Gary Neville because a cameraman spotted a guy who looked a bit like Jan Sievert, who was the incoming Huddersfield manager. I'd already told everyone at Sky, I've spoken to different people. He's definitely not going to be there today. So, but then during the game, Pat, it's definitely him. It's definitely him. It's not him. It's not him. But then I'm looking up. He's just over me, and I don't really, I'd not heard about the name Jan Sievert till a couple of days before. And in the end, I think Man City winning 3-0. It was a very routine game. So I thought, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to go up and make sure, because the last thing I want is to be in my head at that point. The worst scenario was driving home. Sky haven't shown the shot, it was him. So I thought I'll just go and I'll ask him, and no one will be any the wiser. But of course, when I go up, Sky filming him, then they run it on the screen, and that's it. The next thing. What was I talking about anyway? So that's a job, and then so little bits during the game. After the match, you're probably looking at doing 4 as well. Man of the match interview. We always do a losing player now, both managers as well. So 8 interviews, a couple of preview pieces, and occasionally a little bit during the game. That's your touchline stuff. And then during the week, I'm involved in kind of planning, speaking to clubs, editing, going and doing features. We were talking a little bit off camera. I went and did Bruno a couple of weeks ago. With his fiance and his dad at Bowland Lakes, walking the dogs around, which was great. I did one recently with Dan Byrne, driving from the training ground that round before.
Yeah.
Second leg, we went from the training. That was brilliant. Actually, we can get into it a bit more later maybe, but the club, Newcastle at the moment, are probably top of the league in terms of the access they give us and the different things. I think probably because it's been difficult for them in the past, obviously, because you've had the owner that you've had, and it's been quite, it's just been bobbing along, and now they've got this groundswell of good feeling, and the club are doing a really good job of tapping into it. So that's the other thing I do during the week, editing, filming features that run normally in the hour before the game.
Now, a lot of people may not know, who you support. We'll give a hint. Was it difficult? going to the rivals' ground yesterday?
No, I don't find it difficult. Yes, I do. I've got a little soft spot for Arsenal. That's sort of in the family, really. But to be honest, when you're in the job, it does change it a little bit. Because I also go to Tottenham a lot, and in my early years of doing the job, they were probably the best team to deal with because they had those great few years under Pochettino. Pochettino was like so friendly off camera, like probably one of my favourite managers that I've ever dealt with. I remember David Moyes, get another shout out. He did an interview when he was Sunderland manager. I did an interview with him that he didn't like, and it was obviously at Tottenham. So he's absolutely gone mad at me after the interview. And then it was in the old White Hart Lane. After it, Pochettino came back round from doing another interview that he was doing, just gave me a little hug. You're okay. You're okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. So he was really, really a good guy. And also at that time, they're doing really well. And you just had Kane coming through, Dele coming through. All their foreign players were good and interesting and spoke good English. You had Eriksen and Dembele, Vertonghen, Alderweireld, Walker and Rose, who I know aren't foreign players. But you just had such a good group of guys who were they a bit like Newcastle now, in terms of you've got a lot of guys who are good players, a team that's on the up, but also like good interviewees as well. Almost from 1 to 11, you could pick anyone, and they could all do a good, those preview features I'm talking about. They were all good for stuff like that as well. So that's a long-winded way of saying that you start to really enjoy clubs like that, where there's like fertile ground for coming up with ideas and being creative, and you're made to feel welcome and stuff like that. So I don't dislike Tottenham.
You're probably one of the only Arsenal supporters that don't.
I know, but it definitely changes when you on a similar note. For most of my career as a Premier League reporter, Arsenal have been struggling, so sometimes it's been difficult there. I can't remember. Do you remember when Arsenal lost the League Cup final to Man City, and then they lost a few days later? They lost in the snow. They lost again to Man City about 3 days later, and then at the weekend, they got stuffed by Brighton. And I did after the cup final. I didn't do the cup final, but I did those next 2 games. So you're asking Arsene Wenger about his future, and you feel questions you feel like you should be asking and you need to ask. But contrary to popular belief, it's not enjoyable. It's not fun. So Arsenal have been, from a work perspective, until probably this year, not always the easiest club, because so much of it's dictated by how well a team's doing off the pitch.
Yeah. I'll just add them off. Do you ever find bias impacting the way you approach a certain manager or player, specifically, obviously, Arsenal?
No, I don't think. If anything, I probably get more fed up with Arsenal if they're not during times they've not done well. So I think if it impacts you in any way, you maybe you feel like you're more likely to come down hard on them. Mm-hmm. But you definitely. I mean, so I've been to a couple of games in the last couple of years just for fun. Even actually, like when I was up in Newcastle we did a piece with the Bobbies with the LGBT group. And then I went to Newcastle Everton, just to watch a game. And it actually reminded me that when you're there as a reporter, you're in a completely different mindset. So that night, Newcastle against Everton, I was able just to sit and watch the match. And it is obviously, I'm not complaining about the job. It's a good job, but it's so enjoyable to go and not be worrying about what you're going to ask and who you're going to upset, because like I was saying about the Tottenham West Ham game, basically you go to a match and almost always there's one guy at least, i.e. the losing manager, who doesn't want to be there, who doesn't want to be talking to you. So you're thinking about that a lot while the game's unfolding. So that just, the job takes over from any sort of biases from who you like and who you wouldn't like. So like I said with Tottenham, the way I used to feel about Tottenham is not how I feel about them now.
Do you, so let's say something happens in the game, or there's a talking point. So the one that I'm just going to go back and I'll look at is similarly, yeah, a link to you, the Arsenal home game. Well, sorry, our away game, your home game, the 0-0 draw towards the end, and Arteta going like absolutely mad because he thinks it's a penalty and stuff like that. That's obviously what's focused on that. Do you, if there's controversy or something like that, or something like that where there's a spark, or if you remember the Conte, I believe, I can't remember who the other manager was. My mind went completely blank now.
Tuchel. The Tuchel thing.
The Tuchel Conte sort of like, Is that something as a reporter that you like because it gives you something to go at the interview, and it sort of like then makes it more sort of like watchable. So there's like that viewing aspect of it.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, I think the hardest interviews are when people aren't giving you anything. So the example I would give is Manuel Pellegrini, who I don't think would mind me saying it, but he just didn't enjoy doing interviews. He didn't. I remember my boss sort of telling me off after one. He was like, "You're trying to make this into like a good interview." He doesn't want to do it. So ask him about why, for example, Touré's on the bench. Ask him about needing to get back to winning ways, whatever it might be. Ask you 3 questions and then go. There's no point in pushing it too much. So someone like him, I always find difficult because you're just trying to create something that's watchable and it is a good interview. And he's not playing ball. Whereas in that example, you can. I'm trying to think of. So I tell you what was maybe an example. Man City Tottenham the other week. Not the game at Tottenham. The one at Man City, the 4-2. I did the interview when Pep Guardiola called out the players, and I really enjoyed doing that interview. And a lot of people messaged me and said, "Oh, that must have been a nightmare." No, that wasn't. That was great because I knew straight away that he didn't have it in for me, but that also he had something he wanted to say. That it was then my job to kind of coax out of him, really. So at that point, you forget your plans. It's not like, like Morris, I think, was involved in every goal that night. You might have a certain idea of how you're going to work through the interview. But with something like that, plans go out the window, screw up whatever you had written down and just listen and try and get the bits. But yeah, that's sort of, so you've got an incident, you've got something you can latch onto. So it's good in that respect in terms of, because you just want to do a good interview really. And if you've got something interesting that's happened, then yeah, I think push on an open door.
Yeah. Was that also the one where you called out the fans?
Yes. Yeah. Same interview. Yeah. So that's an example of one I would. Yeah, I love doing that.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I remember that, and I'm going to say, because I went to the away game last season when Newcastle got trounced. I think it was 5-0, and it was I could see his point, because I'm like, at that point, Man City were going for the title. They were beating us 5-0, but there wasn't really much noise, and they were leaving night before the end, and I'm like, is this what it's like? Yeah, when you start winning things too often, you just like, it's another, and that's where I would say I'd never want to become that, and it was sort of like that part, and I'm like, it is sad that you can't sell out your stadium for a game like this, when you're going for the title, and we know from where we are, and we're nowhere near fighting for a title at the minute, but we're selling out the stadium now. That you could probably sell it out twice over. In that sense, Wembley, you look at that, we could probably have filled Wembley just on our own. In that sense, there's probably going to be 90,000 down there anyway, just because they want to be in London and that. So it is that sort of thing, and I actually got it. So from an opposition fan, I enjoyed that because it's that viewing thing, it's that controversial aspect, which it sort of like drags you in. You're going, "Oh, I'm going to watch this then."
Yeah.
But I sort of saw his point on that one. We'll move on to the Newcastle side of things now, because we've let you stew and suffer too much there. So the one thing, and I said this, I think the first thing when I actually, because I obviously saw you in Newcastle for the Everton game, and the first thing I did was the voice was what gave it away, and I was like,
"You did Joelinton," that's what you said.
Yeah, exactly, and it was just that voice there. So we'll let you set the record, Stu, because it's never been said though. But I remember your words were, "I didn't realize you were that good."
Yeah, something like that. I haven't. We were speaking about it just before we got started, weren't we? And I thought, will I watch it back? And I was like, nah, I can't watch it back. So yeah, no, there isn't really a record to set straight. It's not, for sure, not my finest hour. And if there were, if I could put the words back in my mouth, I would. But I think what I was explaining to you when we met is, so that game, there's quite a long tunnel off the tunnel, if that makes sense, at Newcastle. So initially we were going to be doing St Maximin and Longstaff. And then I think St Maximin got injured just before the end. And then so Joelinton came. Joelinton had a really good game. And genuinely, it was by far the best I'd ever seen him play. So he was there and he was quite nervous. I think he had done an interview, maybe one or two, but hadn't done much English. And Sean Longstaff was there. So I'm thinking about, okay, how can I just take the nerves out of it for him, just make it sort of light, also keep my sentences short because he's not probably so sure yet with his English. So that kind of was my thinking. Then Eddie Howe's walked down. So I think, that's a further kind of element to it. And Eddie Howe was going to do his interview into the studio with Carrot and Gary Neville. So there's all these things going on. So at that point, I'm expecting Eddie Howe to walk into the room, but then he doesn't. He sends the players ahead. So there was a few different things. One, I was thinking I was going to be doing St Maximin and Longstaff. Then I thought Eddie Howe was going to come in and I had a bit longer. And then the players did walk into the room. So there's a few different things. And like I said, I was just thinking, okay, keep it light, make it straightforward for him. And I suppose, what was I really meaning to say? Like, I don't know, just something like, wow, like how good were you today? And get into the thing of him having had a difficult time. I think if a lot of Newcastle fans were honest, a lot of them had given him a hard time and people were genuinely surprised. But I mean, I meant to say, what did I mean to say? Like I said, I meant to say, wow, what a brilliant performance. And it came off to a lot of people as saying, Lee basically saying to him, I didn't think you were a very good footballer, and actually you aren't bad, which wasn't really the intent, obviously.
Yeah, I actually still remember the game, and it was
Brentford, wasn't it?
No, it was the home game against Manchester United.
All right.
Yeah, it was.
And I remember that especially because that was the first game that I actually watched. Yeah, I made a point of watching Joelinton, and I sat there thinking, wow. Yeah, like he bossed that midfield, incredible. And you were that's the thing. And I'm looking there going, I hope this isn't a flash in the pan because we've got some play on my hand. If this is he was just unreal. Like he bossed it, and that's where, it was. And I think that's probably where you were probably going, wow, what a performance. But
exactly.
Fans,
I was like you.
Yeah, but I think some Newcastle fans, were probably thinking, wow, I didn't realise he could do that. He wasn't there. Because, there were fans who were writing him off.
Yeah,
many things probably for that. He was playing out of position. He was playing under a manager I don't think many fans liked. There's that sense. But,
I think I was trying to get that just a little bit. That I genuinely watching him that night was like I had a sense of wonder, and I was trying to get that across. I'm like, oh my god, I didn't. It's not like you thought he was terrible and actually he was all right. You were suddenly looking at a player who'd really struggled up front, looking like one of the best midfielders in the league. And there's so many things with that. Like for him, how has he done it? For the man, how good is the manager to spot that a guy who's maybe struggling with his back to goal, if you just sort of spin him around and put him in a different position, is a really, really top player. So, but the thing is, in a sense, it's not. That's why I said it's not really about me making excuses. I accept it wasn't very good, and it doesn't really matter what my intent was because I can't go round to everyone's living room and everyone who's watched it on social media and say, "Oh, I know what you're thinking, but actually, this is what I meant," because it comes across how it comes across. So, I caught up with Sean Longstaff actually. Go on, sorry, Joe.
I personally knew what you meant, but as you said, obviously that specific sentence, did it hit you straight away after that? Hold on, this might be something. Or was it not until after where you were described as a savage comment, and it was weird by Gary Neville, as he said?
Yeah, Gary Neville really didn't like it. He thought it was terrible. No, it probably did. Well, probably the first alarm bell was like, I don't know if the camera was on him, but Sean Longstaff went like that. And then obviously gave a bit of an impassioned defence. And I did speak to Sean Longstaff afterwards. I said, look, I'm not, at that point, I wasn't thinking it was that big a deal. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm really sorry if that came across as rude. That it wasn't my intention at all. I was just trying to say, like, again, wow, how good were you today? And he's like, oh, no, it's fine. And then I've got quite a few, I went to a university with a couple of guys who were Newcastle fans. So I met them in a bar. And just phones going absolutely crazy. Like the blue dot on Twitter just and none of it's good. And I think a lot of it was one, obviously you've got a really passionate group of fans with Newcastle. You probably got it in the neck more from them than I would have, with certain other clubs. I think I might have got away with it a bit more. And then I think it was the day after Boxing Day. I think it was definitely between Christmas and New Year. Yeah. It was the only game on at that time. So there's all these things. So everyone's, again, like if you say it's the 5:30 on a Saturday and there's loads of other matches and loads of other stories, it moves on quite quickly. But that felt like a really bad one. Just the timing of it was terrible as well. It was the only game. Again, it was between Christmas and New Year. Everyone sat on their sofa saying, "Who's this guy?" And
yeah, I think
not
it was
necessarily
the game. Yeah, I think it was the game on the 27th of December. Probably
that sounds right.
It was they'd moved that because I was like, oh great, I've got Boxing Day off work, it's fine. Then they moved it to the 27th. I'm going, oh, typical Sky, moving it in opinions. Right, I need to try and get that day off. So no, it was that, and like I said, in the one point which I was gonna to put on there was it great to see like Sean Longstaff getting straight in there to give that sort of like defense to Joelinton and that, and to show that look, we are together in that.
He was really, I think he's a really good interviewee, Sean Longstaff. Yeah, it probably was actually, and I did another one with him where he was really good. Do you remember another Man United game? The Longstaff brothers did it together.
Yeah, Matty scored.
That was really memorable one as well, actually. They were really good. Any player like that, and he did, didn't he? Really kind of spoke from the heart and defended his mate. So it was good to an extent. But like I said to Joel, there, it's probably then the first seed been planted in like, okay, I know what I meant to say and how I meant to come across then, but I'm not 100% sure that I've nailed it. Yeah. So there you go.
Well, we'll move away from the Joelinton saga now, and we'll put that to bed.
It has been a saga.
Yeah. I'll leave the Bruno one till last, just because we save the best till last, and Bruno for me is the best. Obviously you mentioned Dan Burn, the car video, which I absolutely loved watching. You can tell he's like such a character in that sense. Whether or not his dancing skills will get him on Strictly is debatable. But you can just tell that, and I think he's even admitted when the takeover happened, he was like, that's my shot of coming to Newcastle. So is it like, did you feel like that sense of sort of like pride from going, I'm here, I'm playing for my hometown club? And at that point it was a case of we're one game away from getting to Wembley and in a final.
Yeah, to be honest, I've had a little I've kept my eye out for him ever since. If I'm completely honest, obviously I knew of him playing for Brighton and I'd watched him a bit, but I don't think I even knew he was a Geordie. So, but the club put him up for an interview just after he'd signed. So I actually interviewed him basically in his old seat before his debut. Villa, I think. I'm not 100% sure on that. But he was really, really good. And ever since then, I mean, it's going back a little bit to that thing of when you were saying to me, how do I feel about Tottenham? when you do an interview like that, you completely, and I don't know if he remembers my names, but he always, like, if I see him in the tunnel, he'll say a little hello or something like that. So just hearing someone like that getting to absolutely fulfill their dream, it's he, in that car interview, he was saying him and his mates used to play a game called Commentary, where they'd sort of commentate while they played against each other, and he's obviously smashing it between the tree and the jumpers and shouting Shearer. He's going with his mates. He's got vivid memories of walking up the hill and listening to the Champions League music and all that. So and all his mates, who were his mates that he played football with then, still go to all the games with him. And you can almost see when he talks about playing for Newcastle and even being a fan, like, he has to sort of, he speaks a bit slower. You can tell he's kind of like stopping himself welling up, really. And it's just because we all had that dream, didn't we? We all wanted to do what he's doing, and for him to do it and be so humble about it, it's brilliant. So, like when he scored his goal against Leicester, that was absolutely chuffed for him.
I mean, he must be like the ideal interviewee, isn't he? As like a player,
Yeah.
like he's passionate, he's well spoken, he's at home, he's local. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
I think it's going to be an absolute life changer. He is the ideal interviewee, because also like, he came out and did the interview after the 0-0 with Arsenal, and he had a tough maybe 20 minutes from Saka, didn't he? And then got to grips, had a bit of help as well. But I love the way he spoke about that, like what a top player Saka was and the challenge of dealing with him. So my point being, even if it's in a more difficult place, if Newcastle, God forbid, lose the final, then probably who's going to come out and face the cameras, I bet there's a pretty high chance it's him. So he's always got something interesting to say. Brilliant character. He'd be right up there in terms of the number one interviewees in the league, I'd say.
The only thing is, I bet you wish that you were the person behind the interview when he did the bit on like the Newcastle Club channel when he was like, I'm happy, I'm going to get my suit measured.
Yeah. That's the only thing, isn't it? He sort of, I suppose you kind of think he's so good in every interview. Like that car interview went really well, and you think, you're editing it together, and you think this has been great. But then you see other things he does, and he's great in them as well. You think, it's nothing to do with me. He's just good at them. So, but what I was going to say is, I think it's going to be, obviously he's got to play for Newcastle, but he's got to play for Newcastle at such a good time. I think it's going to make such a difference to his life after football now, because there'll be Newcastle realistically are going to be a completely different proposition to what they've been under Mike Ashley. This is probably just the start of something, isn't it? You certainly hope so. And I think he's going to have so many offers now for once he stops playing, because people like Sky will be after guys with an insight into the Newcastle dressing room, who've been part of this team that's started to become a top-end team again. So I think, as opposed to his career before, where he's been a bit of a journeyman and then made it to the Premier League with Brighton, he might have been, if he wanted to go into the media, which I think he does, he might have been looking at more local stuff. But I think now he'll come out and he'll have Sky and BT and Amazon. I think he'll have a few options, and it's really been quite a good year for him, hasn't it?
Yeah. Question is, who does he replace at Sky?
Oh, that is a good question. What about that reporter who asked that really terrible question to Joelinton? We could get rid of him.
Well, the fact is, I don't think you can get rid of Mika, because Mika's just he's just Roy Keane. I'm going to say Roy Keane, I absolutely love as a pundit now. He's like refreshing to watch, and he's actually quite entertaining. Yeah, when you look at that, and there's points where Gary Neville annoys us, but the majority of the time, I actually
Karen Neville, like, it's never going to be.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite as well. I love them two together on a Monday night. I do. It's
like the perfect dream team in that, and like I said, I do actually quite like that. But I also, because I do think Gary Neville can be critical when he wants to, but can also be quite defensive. Saying that, I also know Jamie Carragher, because he did, I think there was 2 Friday night games at St James's Park last season. Leeds United under Mike Ashley. And then he came up and did the Wolves one, which was after the takeover. And he's like, you could see like the night and day between like what it was like and the atmosphere and stuff like that. I actually remember, because where I was sitting at the time, Cara was standing like in the corner bit, to wait for the full time to go to get like back on the pitch and that to do like the interviews and that. And he got absolutely mobbed by Newcastle fans. He went over, I think, to give one a shot, and then he was sort of like dragged into the crowd and that, because at that point we were winning. At that point we were like staying up.
Honestly, I can promise you, people love going. People love, not just obviously Newcastle fans, but people love going to St James's Park. I absolutely love going. It's just it's a great city. There's something about where the stadium sits, and be it, you just can wander up from the train station and get there. It's always a great atmosphere. It was even when during what you guys might refer to as the dark times, but now with the club on the up. I mean, there was I did the Arsenal game. It was your last home game of last season, wasn't it? Did we speak about that, Mark, when we met? Yeah.
Because I think you were trying to forget about that game, to be fair.
So great to experience atmospheres like that. It's always good to go to a club where like everything's working, manager, players, fans, teams on the up. From our perspective, the club's working really well with us, giving us different, the Bruno thing, the Dan Burn thing, letting us be creative. It's always, I've always enjoyed going to St James's Park, but at the moment it's incredible.
Am I sensing a little soft spot there for Newcastle?
I've got a soft spot, until it turned on me. I have, because I've been there. I forget now. I've been going for a while, but one of the first matches I went to that wasn't an Arsenal game was Newcastle winning at Sheffield Wednesday. My dad took me and my brother there for a completely random reason, and we went. So that was Ginola's first goal, right at the start of the near miss in terms of the title. So I had a soft spot for them then, because that was also, I mean, Joel, you're too young, but Mark, you can back me up on this. The players who started coming to the Premier League, it was crazy, wasn't it? Now a top foreign player gets into the Premier League. Yeah. But a Spria like arriving through the snow, you're just like, what is happening here? I can remember seeing the rumour in the paper that Klinsmann was going to go to Tottenham, and thinking, of course, Jurgen Klinsmann isn't going to go to Tottenham. That's ridiculous. So it was so exciting, because that was the start of really good foreign players coming to the Premier League, and Newcastle probably being like the leaders for that. And that's probably also my favourite Premier League season. I do wish Newcastle had got over the line, but it was that was such a good year.
I think the undoing was the 4-3 at Liverpool, which probably goes down as probably one of the greatest all-time Premier League games. Yeah. Unfortunately, we won the wrong side of that, but
but even that Monday Night Football, where the first half you missed so many chances against Man United, didn't you? And even if you'd have won that, you probably would have over the line.
Well, that's the thing, because I think which game was it? Your mind's gone blank. But see, going back to the Arsenal one, which you mentioned at the end of the season, at the end of last season, I was again, because I think it's inbuilt in us as a Newcastle fan to have that negative sort of like look on things because of what we've been used to. But I was going, we've been this good, we've been so good this half. It's going to come back and bite with. I actually think and I'm going to say, I think Arsenal lost the game as soon as they entered the pitch, because I think those players listened to the atmosphere, saw that, and I just think it maybe got a bit too much for them. Just my sense, because it just seemed from the start as if they were like, not really sure we're up for this, whereas we were, because it was like a celebration because we knew we were safe and all that. And I actually think, Eddie Howe probably said to the players, look, I think he's probably went, look, let's play the way I want to play now, rather than the way that we'll probably maybe have to adapt to stay up. And it was that point where you were looking at that and going, actually, yeah. I still think I'm sure the Man City game 3-3. That for me, I look at that and I'm going.
That was when you went, whoa, we're actually.
But the one point where I was going whoa was because I was leaving that game disappointed that we drew 3-3 with Man City. Yeah. And that's it.
I liked that game as well. I did that game, and it really sticks in my head. Eddie Howe before the game, he said something like, he goes, he was very upfront about it. He said, no, we've chosen our poison. We're going for it. There was no kind of, how everyone plays basically against Man City, 2 banks of 4 or a bank of 5 and a bank of 4, and then tries to sort of break on them. But Newcastle absolutely went for Man City that day, and it was a really good game.
It was. So was it you who was asked the question by Pep of, did you enjoy the game?
It was, yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, it was that game. Yeah, he did. Yeah. Well remembered, Mark.
Yeah. No, I always remember that because obviously you've seen differences. Like Klopp was quite bitter when at the Anfield game when they'd won and it was the last minute, but he was like very bitter in terms of like he was a bitter winner. But whereas Pepper drew a game and he was like, well done, Newcastle, and we're here to entertain. I think he probably had respect that there was a side that actually went and attacked Man City rather than sitting back. And he was like, look, we're all in the game of entertaining, giving football. And that's when he went, did you enjoy the game? He went, right, good, we've done a good job then.
And then he walked off. He was like, oh,
yeah.
Okay, bye.
But that for me stood because I'm going, that gave me a little bit more respect for Pep in terms of that one, because you're going, he could have been blah blah blah, but the fact that he did that, and like I said, that was probably the part where, as a Newcastle fan, you're starting to look going, hang on, there could be something going on here because like I said, there was periods in the game where we were outplaying Man City in that, and the fact that we went, See, I was buzzing because when the Trippier free kick went in, I was going 3-1. And you're going, hang on, we're 3-1 up against Manchester City. This doesn't happen in that. And I think it's because we were 3-1 up and then went to 3-3. I think that's where the feeling was, we could have won this. If it had been the other way around and we'd been 3-1 down and got back to 3-3, you probably would have been buzzing. So it's like those sort of things. But as a game to watch, and I think probably as a game as a neutral to watch.
I mean, how good was Maximin? Unplayable that day, wasn't he? One of his best. Unbelievable.
And thankfully, I think we were probably one of the only sides to keep Haaland down to single figures at that point of the season, because every other season, like, he's got another hat trick, he's got another hat trick, and you're sitting there going, we only got him. We kept him down to 1 and quite quiet, but it was a heck of a game. The Chelsea game. Again, you look at when we went to Spurs. That for me. The Spurs away performance. And that was another one where I sat. Then I was like, okay, hang on, something is really happening here, because to go to Spurs, who'd had an incredible record, I think they'd won like
our record
so many in it. And they'd won so many in a row. And if you think it wasn't that long ago, we'd lost 4 or 5. We'd lost heavily there. In that one, and to go there and do that, and you look at, and I still look at that time. And when you look at when we went to Arsenal and drew 0-0, yes, it was hard and we had to really work hard. And Arsenal probably on another day, if they could have finished, would have won that game. But you're then going away and going, right, okay, so we went to the Emirates, which again, really good record, and we came away with a point. So you're looking at that and going, do you know what? Yeah. And the fact that even if we look now, I know it's 2 games we've lost, but only 1 team's beat us this season in the league, and that's Liverpool.
Yeah.
If we count the Sheffield Wednesday game, we've only lost 3 games all season, and it is that it is strange to look at that aspect of it. And when it's strange, but I'm like I said, it must be great, and I know I've spoken to obviously Keith Downey since
Keith's been on, has he?
Oh, Keith's come on a couple of times with us.
How was he?
Yeah.
Keith's great. Yeah, and obviously Pete as well. He's been on a couple of times and that. But no, like Keith's just amazing in that. But I remember, I'll actually give you a little bit of an insight there. on the day of the takeover, on the Thursday, Keith was at Jesmond Dean Hotel where Amanda Staveley and the consortium were staying. And someone had put a picture up of Keith Downey there, and we retweeted it, which led to Keith Downey inboxing us going, can you please help get that down? Because if fans start congregating the Jesmond Dean Hotel, it might scrap. It might sort of like
delay.
Well, no, it might mean like the scrapping of the interviews because you can't really crowd control there.
No.
So then we were like jumping in. We were messaging the guy who'd originally put the picture up, and we're like, "Look, can you just delete it?" Yeah, and that's the thing. As a fan base, we were like, "Okay, yeah, we're going to do this because we don't want to upset the new owners coming through." But I also remember he said at that time after we'd done that, he went, he'd made the decision to go to the stadium to do the announcement rather than doing it at Jesmond Dean Hotel because he just thought it felt right.
Yeah.
And even he said he heard the cheers when the announcement was being made, and he was like, how he felt. He said he knew like for a couple of hours before that it was going through, but she said he had the Premier League statement and he was reading it, but he was waiting for the call to be taken to do that, and he was like, it probably didn't dawn until after how momentous what he was saying, because all he was doing was just reporting, but what he was saying was doing that. And then obviously probably very long days for him, because I think he was up late on the Wednesday. He'd have had the Thursday and then obviously all those ones, and then so I think as I said, look, he's covered all like the bad era, and
a big difference, make a big difference to Keith actually. Like it's different for me because I'm sort of dipping in and out of clubs, but if you're covering a club, I think that would have been quite hard work covering the Mike Ashley era, really, because there's so much negativity towards the owner at that time that you don't have to say too much wrong. You don't have to do a Joelinton to be in the bad books. So you're constantly probably on the edge, worrying about what you're going to say, probably getting a lot of grief because people know it's not your fault as a reporter, but if you're reporting what Mike Ashley said or stuff like that, you're going to get it in the neck. So now to report on a club that's obviously in a completely different frame of mind, a fan base is in a completely different place, then it'll be. I think his life will be a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable, I would guess.
And you can tell in his face he was pretty much tearing up. And I know he reinforces that he's just a Northeast reporter, but I do think, he
admitted it. He said he was tearing up, and I know Pete also said the same in the studio. He says, if they'd cut to me a few seconds before, you just would have seen us blubbering from that fan. I know he'd also got a bit of stick because some fans had sent him actually a bag of cans to the Sky studio. And he took a picture of it, and he's like, they got grief, and I'm like, but that's just a joke. It's one of those things. I also know he took it personally when like the bid failed, because he was like, look, I was just reporting the news and that, and I'm like, look, don't feel bad. It's your job to report what you get given in that, and I've always understood that. But no, it was that time. I just remember it because I think I remember Sam Fender turned up there.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember that because it's again the infamous BBC interview the morning after, and he was like, I'm still hungover. So again, it's all those things with like the great bits that you're going to get in there. One which I'm just we'll go on to now. Otherwise, see, I just get giddy every time I think of the takeover. I do just say, oh, happy memories. Just before that, I actually remember, and we'll see that I was in York on the Wednesday before, where basically nothing, no inkling, no hint, and then the news broke that that Saudi Arabia had done the piracy thing, they'd done the deal with Qatar and everything like that. And then I'm sitting there going, oh, that could help with the takeover. It might be in it. So maybe by the time January comes, because this was still October, by the time January comes, we might have more on there. then I was getting on the train, and there was a little bits of rumours. By the time I got back to Newcastle, it was like, yeah, the takeover is definitely going through.
Imminent.
And then by the time I got to the night time, it was like, yeah, it'll be going through tomorrow. It was like so fast. Which and it was like a whirlwind in that, and I'm gutted that I didn't go to the stadium, but I was just that tired, and I was thinking also because of the fact that when you're doing the social media aspect of it, I was like, I don't want to be somewhere where if there's loads of people, then you can't get a connection. So I was like, I'll stay here. I've got the connection. I'll do the bits and that. So it was one of those ones because you were like trying to stay relevant. You were trying to get the news out as quick as you possibly could.
Yeah,
but
I get that.
And obviously, I think from that point, because I know, I think even Pete said at that time he was like trying to contact like his contacts, like ex-players and that. Shea Given, I think I remember, was doing an interview when his son then came on and jumped on the camera and they said, "Tune."
I didn't see that actually.
Yeah, no, I remember that, and it was like just that excitement aspect of it, and this leads into it. But obviously, the January came, and probably out of nowhere, the story about Bruno Rice joining, and I'll put my hand up. I hadn't heard that much about him. So you start doing your research and you're going, oh, actually, he sounds good, but I don't think anyone expected him to be what he was, at that point, and what he's become, and that. And you're now looking and going, how on earth have we got this player? Yeah,
I mean, funnily enough, the only other club interested did happen to be Arsenal. So that was interesting. The fact that he's obviously proved to be this amazing Brazilian. And normally when you get a player of his caliber, there'd be loads, there'd be a list of clubs. But it just seemed to be like Arsenal are interested, then Newcastle have placed a bid apparently out of nowhere. And it was like, I'm just so surprised. Like,
no, I didn't. I mean, I'd seen little bits and pieces of him, but does anyone ever know that a player's going to have that kind of impact? I mean, I remember I was at Chelsea the other week when for Enzo's Enzo Fernandez's debut. Look at the list of like record signings in the Premier League, and they're so often not a hit. So if you can spend 100 million, it doesn't guarantee you a success. Then what was Bruno, 40? Is that right?
40,
around about that?
Around that, yeah.
So you don't, but they were obviously fairly confident in what they were getting, and he's just been unbelievable. And the first time I interviewed him was actually at that Tottenham away game, and he came in. He was so tired because if you remember, his son had been born a day before or something, or 2 days before. But on the back of that, he was so like friendly and smiley. That's what gave me the idea to try and do something a bit more with him away. So during the World Cup, I spoke to Ryan Parrish at Newcastle. Like, could we do something? He said, yeah, I think we probably could. So we'd arranged. So we were just going to go for a little walk with him around Bowlam Lakes, and he was going to take his dogs, who've got their own Instagram page, which you probably know. And then when he's about 5 minutes before the interview is due to start, Bruno called Ryan. He said, I've got my fiance's with me and my dad. We were like, because that's great. Obviously, it's the nicest thing about that day was we felt like we got a proper insight into him. But it's quite, you know what it's like, like a path that goes around woods. It's quite tight. So you've got two cameramen, me and Bruno, sound man. You suddenly get all these people on a little path. It was a bit worrying, but they were lovely. His fiancée Anna spoke really good English, which is why he wanted her there to help him with his English. But I think the one thing I actually said this to him off camera, because he still worries about his English, but I said that I think it's the enthusiasm that he delivers his words with and his smile that means no one cares if it's not perfect English. None of us speak perfect English anyway, but it's the way. It's just his mannerisms and the way he is. He reminds me a bit of Bukayo Saka in a way. It's not necessarily there wasn't a particular headline, I don't think, from that interview, but it's just his body language and his manner. There was a little bit at the end where you could just tell how kind of bowled over they've been by the reception they've got and how the city's taken to them. And she was like, "Oh yeah, we just don't ever want to go," which is, I mean, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be pretty happy with hearing.
Yeah,
exactly. I will also say the Bruno Callum Wilson, because I think it was Callum Wilson that was with him for the Spurs away game. That game was the one where, as Newcastle fans, we absolutely loved that, because you could just see the joy from both those players, and that we were so happy for Bruno. Obviously, his son's a Geordie now. It's that's a given. It's happening there.
Yeah,
and you can just see that.
It's that joy that is everything, really, because what people get sick of, and I get it a lot with people, saying, "Oh, post-match interviews are boring," and because sometimes I think it's because it's almost like they have too much training, and people feel like they're seeing a robot. They don't feel like they're seeing a real person who cares about the club in the same way that they care about them. So you don't necessarily need a headline. You get a little, like you say, a little bit of interaction in that interview after the Tottenham game between Callum Wilson and Bruno. It's that sort of thing that people are looking for, I think, rather than any sort of grand statement or headline or anything like that. You get just a little bit of chemistry like that, and you feel like, these guys care as much as I do about the team.
I think something like that would work with any player. That sort of just enigma being unveiled outside the pitch of like what sort of person they are. Like, I reckon you could do that exact same thing with the entire squad, and it would get just as much as a hit as Bruno did. Yeah.
Well, I think Sky have got something. I'm not doing it because I've been trying to sort of rope off Newcastle for myself because they're being so helpful, and obviously they're doing well. But I'm not sure it's going up. They're filming something with Sean Longstaff this week away from the training ground. I don't know exactly, like on the beach or something. I don't know much more about it than that.
It'll probably be Tynemouth. And then the only reason I'm thinking that, which it might have aired or we might have seen something else because by the time this goes out. But because obviously he's a No Shields lad, as we call it, NE29 lad. And obviously Tynemouth's quite close by, so you just think that he's got. But he's also then got his links to Whitley Bay because obviously his dad is an ice hockey player for Whitley Warriors. So there is that. So there is that sort of link in there. So it'll probably be something like along those lines and that.
That sounds.
But, it's going to be great. In that sense. And like I said, it's those happy peers. What we'll do, because we'll wrap up in that. But I'm just going to ask you for a prediction, because obviously this is going to be aired before the cup final. So we're gonna ask you to put you put you on the line there a bit.
Okay. I had a really strong feeling that Newcastle were going to win. But it's probably faded a little bit just in the last couple of weeks. I think Newcastle on penalties, because I have felt a little bit like it's written in the stars. I kind of had a feeling that Newcastle could win, kind of 0-0, but obviously you're sort of struggling to score and win in the same way that you were. But I still think it'll be tight. 1-1 Newcastle on penalties. There you go. That was stressful for you, wasn't it?
We're used to it. But it then leads into the Loris Karius.
The redemption arc. He saves 3 on penalties. He wins Newcastle's first cup in X many years, 55 years or whatever.
Big Dan Burns smashes in the winning pen.
That's going to happen. But see, this is it. The funny thing also is there will be a Newcastle United player getting a winner's medal regardless.
Oh yeah, because of the Bravka.
Yeah. So if Newcastle, do go the way that you're predicting that, we'll have to send him off to trudge up with with Man U.
Sorry, boys. Blimey. When are you going down?
Well, this will probably be out when after I'm we're looking to put this out on the Friday, so just before this, and I'll be down then because I travel down. I'll have travelled down on the Friday lunchtime, so I'm arriving in London at around about 3:00 on the Friday, and I don't leave London until 7 p.m. on the Monday evening. So,
wow,
it's a long weekend.
Yeah.
To be fair, I've been down London a few times, so I know the area well. Probably a few. Well, the one thing which we'll actually also is we have actually got one of our podcast guys, Max, who lives in Sweden. He's made the decision. He's flying over on Friday and staying until Tuesday. He hasn't got a ticket for the game. We've tried to do what we could to see if there's any possible ways of getting him a ticket. But no, he's traveling over from Sweden to watch it. And he's like, look, I don't care whether or not I've got a ticket or not, even if I'm just in a pub watching it with other Newcastle fans.
Be around people,
yeah, exactly. But you see, there's all these stories. I think there's someone coming from China. There's people coming from Canada, from the Middle East, and that just to be there because so that's what it is. People are traveling. That there'll be people going down in the cars. There'll be people going down in buses. Obviously, the only reason I'm doing Friday, Monday is basically because Newcastle fans took all the Saturday tickets, and on Sunday there wasn't a train leaving late enough. So it was like, well, do you know what? Well, I'll just I'll have a bit of time on there. I've got a feeling, and I will see because this has all been planned, but anyone who's in London and not a Newcastle fan, maybe stay away from Trafalgar Square from around 5 p.m. on Saturday.
We're not going to be as ruthless as Sunderland fans of doing certain acts in a war.
No, we're a little bit more respectful, than that.
I'm sure it'll be good nature. It'll be great, won't it? It'll be good fun.
Yeah, it will. But what we'll do is we'll wrap this up. We'll say thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And as a Newcastle fan base, we'll promise not to give you any more stick on Twitter for any faux pas on post match.
I will promise to do better in future.
Well, thank you for your time.